now.
Hi, everyone. Before I introduce myself, I have a huge favor to ask of everyone. I know that we're in quarantine and it's a little bit awkward for people to be on screen. However, it's more awkward for me talking to a blank screen. So if anybody don't mind coming off and showing their faces, it would be helpful so I can see a few human beings. That would be awesome. Hello. Oh, so much better. That just brightened my day. It's really hard just standing here watching a blank screen with a bunch of blank boxes. There you go. That feels a lot better. Hello, hello. Awesome. So today I am going to go through with you a very quick and easy menu. My name is Akeisha Hayde. I am the executive chef for Harvard University Dine-In, residential dine-in. And this dish today is one that I call, it's fun, but yet one that people always mess up because it's either too much sauce, too little sauce, pasta is overcooked, it's really mushy. So I'm gonna give you guys a few tips today to show you how you can make this dish pretty awesome and amazing at home with your family. And feel free if you have questions to please ask. I'll be more than happy to answer them in real time. Okay, so, and my setup is a little bit awkward, so my back might be to you a little bit, so bear with me. I'll try and do my best. If you look on your screen, you'll see a second view, so I'll try and make the close-ups closer so that you can see it, all right? So, everybody can see that? All right, awesome. So today I'm going to start with this recipe, and there's a few pointers I want to share with you before I even start. So when cooking pasta, one of the main things we always want to make sure is that our water is boiling. Not just, you know, a little bit of boil, but rapid boil. So that's what I have going on right now. I have my water boiling for my pasta, and I also have some water boiling to blanch my broccoli in. Using the term blanch, it's literally just a quick cook that we're going to cook the broccoli, take it out and rinse it under cold water to stop the cooking. That would help us to retain the nice fresh green color, but also when we mix it into our pasta, have some bite to it. So we don't want our broccoli too mushy, and we also don't want our pasta to be overcooked because we're also going to add hot sauce and chicken to it. So everything we're going to kind of cook separately and then come together, bring it together with the sauce and serve it with a yummy bowl and a spoon, because I feel like a bowl is more comforting than a plate, all right? So to start off, I'm gonna start first by starting to cook my pasta since it's gonna take the longest. So my water is boiling and it's a rapid boil, like I said before. So I'm gonna put my pasta in. While my pasta is cooking, I'm also gonna show you how to sear the chicken off. Today I'm using chicken tenders. And then we're gonna blanch some broccoli. And then the best part is making the cream sauce, because this cream sauce you can use with this dish along with many others. Okay, so we can get started. So here I have my pot with my boiling water that I'm just gonna add my pasta to. Now, once I add my pasta to that water, I wanna make sure I give it a good stir so my pasta doesn't stick together. And I'm also gonna remove the cover. And don't be alarmed if you start seeing little bubbles coming out from the side of the pan. It's not a big deal. It's just the nature of the pasta pot, all right? So while that's going, I'm also gonna blanch my broccoli. Once I blanch the broccoli, I'm also gonna set that aside, and that's gonna go pretty quickly. When you blanch your broccoli, no more than about 30 seconds. So we're not trying to cook the broccoli to death. We're just trying to give it a nice cook to retain its freshness and crisp. We're also gonna, while I'm doing the broccoli, I'm gonna turn my stove on a medium for my chicken. So we're gonna be doing multiple things at a time, all right? So pasta is cooking, water is going, and I'm gonna add my broccoli to that. I just have some broccoli florets here that I'm gonna add.
Two questions for you, Chef. Do
Yeah.
you cook your pasta uncovered, and is the water salted?
Yes, I cook my pasta uncovered because if I cover it, all the bubbles start coming out of the pot and then I have a big cleanup at the end. even though it will cook faster, but I don't like the cleanup. So I cook it uncovered. And yes, my water is salted. And it's good to say you want to really salt your water heavily because it's the only time you'll get that pasta to take on the seasoning, okay? So my broccoli is in. Just going to make sure all of it is covered. And once I add the broccoli to my water, it's going to look like it's no longer bubbling, obviously, because the broccoli just kind of dropped the temperature of the water. But as you can see how bright and green that still looks, okay? And this is not going to take too long. So while that is going, my other pan is heating. And I'm going to keep an eye on the broccoli because the last thing we want to do is have soggy broccoli. All right? So it's been about 30 seconds or so. I'm actually going to take my broccoli out. And once again, I always say it's better to undercook your broccoli than to overcook it. But at this point, because we're going to be adding so many different things to this dish, it's better for me to take my broccoli off now. How I'm going to do that, I'm going to take my broccoli, dump it out into a strainer, and run it under cold tap water, okay? So you can see that here, all my broccoli is nice and green. And if you can see, my broccoli still has its color, all right? And so we're gonna hold it till our next step. So the next thing that we really wanna focus on is searing our chicken. One thing I always wanna explain when we're doing this part. So in the recipe, it tells you to season the chicken with olive oil, salt, pepper, and some other herbs. You do not need to put oil in your pot if it's a non-stick pot. The other thing is we want to put our chicken around our pan, but not overcrowding the pan, so one layer. And the second thing that many cooks make the mistake with is we don't have patience and we always want to mix everything and keep mixing. The more you mix, you'll develop a stewed chicken versus a seared chicken. So we want the chicken to have some color, some texture to it, so do not touch your chicken. Once you put it in the pan, I ask you, do not touch the chicken. Oh, and you need to practice social distancing with the chicken as well. So nothing touching each other. Okay, so my pan has been heating up and it's on a medium low for now while I add my chicken.
Chef, can you tilt your camera just a little so we can see your pan?
Got it? All right.
Perfect, thank you.
And for this dish, you can use chicken thighs, you can use chicken breast. You can pretty much use anything that you like, just once it's boneless. Okay, my preference is tenders because they cook quickly and they're not too chewy. Some of the chicken breasts, if you get the big ones in the supermarket, I tend to find them a little bit tough to eat. So I tend to go with the tenders in dishes like this.
Chef, another question came in.
Yeah.
Is your broccoli blanching water seasoned?
Yes, my water is seasoned, so just a little bit of salt, nothing else. And for the pasta, I do not cook my pasta with oil. I actually, if I need, because this is going into something right after, I don't need to oil it. But if I were going to save my pasta for the next day or use it later on, I would put the oil after I strain it off. So not in the water. So I'm really trying to make this work. So I'm gonna put all my chicken in, but just keep in mind what I'm doing is I'm not moving the chicken that is already in the pan. And the reason for that is I do not want to stop that from getting its nice sear or to affect the Maillard effect, which is that nice brown color that the chicken takes on once it hits the heat, okay? The other thing is the chicken will tell you when it's cooked, only because as the chicken starts cooking, if you can see on the camera, some of the pieces are starting to get that nice opaque color. And so you'll start seeing that, and then the chicken actually starts shrinking and moving away from the pan. So that's its indicator to us that it's cooking. All right, and then as we start getting the color, same thing, it'll start developing more color around the edges, and that's when I'll start turning my chicken. So I'm not going in there poking my chicken and prodding it and mixing it and doing all sorts of stuff with it, okay? Leave the chicken alone, it didn't do anything to you. So I'm gonna check on my pasta while that is going. Still have some time. And now I'm gonna start turning some of the chicken that I put in first. As you can see, that's some color right on there. And that's really what we're looking for, because once again, that's another layer of flavor, all right? And I didn't need to put oil again in the pan because I seasoned the chicken with a little bit of olive oil. So there's no need, once I'm using a non-stick pan, to add additional oil to it.
Chef,
Yeah.
I have a question. Why should you blanch the vegetables? What is the reason for that?
One, it does, if you were to just add it with the hot sauce, it wouldn't cook. But two, it helps the broccoli to stay green. So when you blanch it, it helps the vegetables to retain its color once you add it into another dish. So you don't end up with gray broccoli. So these are the little steps that make you go from a home cook to a gourmet cook, and you can really impress your friends, just like the garnish I'm going to show you today. Will really make people think you can cook, even though this might be your first time being in the kitchen. So I promise you. So as you can see, our chicken is browning up nicely. And then once this is done, I'm just going to take the heat off and leave it. And then we're going to continue to make our cream sauce and get this dish going. So I'm going to check my pasta. So I have to admit, even as a chef, the one way I test my pasta is actually taste it. And it depends on the type of dish that I'm using, will depend on how done I want it. So today I'm going to do it to al dente because I really want the heat from the cream sauce and everything else to finish cooking the pasta. And then once you start mixing it and stirring it, if I were to overcook the pasta, then it would be very mushy, and then the sauce just gets absorbed, and then that's when it kind of looks like not so good. All right. And this pasta usually takes about 10 minutes, and I can feel it. I don't even need to taste it. It's not done yet, so I'll let that go for a little bit. My chicken is almost done, and once my chicken is done, we're going to start with our cream sauce. Okay, so any questions while I wait for that? No? Okay, all right. Is there anyone cooking along with us, or is everyone just saying hi? Okay, awesome.
Ahmad is cooking.
Woo, yay, okay. How is it going so far?
So far, so good, but I think the chicken is taking longer than yours, so.
Okay, did you put too much chicken in the pan?
I put enough chicken in the pan.
Okay.
It's not too much. They're not touching.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get to see what that dish looks like on camera after. Aha!
If it looks good, maybe.
Thank you.
There's a question, Chef.
Yeah.
You heat the pan before you add the chicken, right?
Yes. And now because my chicken is brown on both sides, I can actually go in and mix that up. And as everyone can see how beautiful that is, and that is done. Okay. So I'm going to turn the heat off of that and set this aside.
And there's a question about washing chicken. What does that mean to wash your chicken? And is that something you do?
I am a firm believer in rinsing or washing chicken, and it's not like a laundry wash, but it's really when your chicken comes in package, and depending on whether you buy it frozen or fresh, there tends to be some form of, for me, it's a sliminess on the chicken, or sometimes I just don't know where the chicken was prepared. So my preference is to rinse it in some cold water with a squeeze of lemon, vinegar, or any other citrus that you have. So it's literally, you just put it in a little bowl, put some water in there, squeeze the lemon or lime on it, rinse the chicken, and then you proceed to do whatever you want with it. And that just takes away the sliminess, and it ensures, obviously, if your chicken fell on the floor before it went in the package, that it's clean. But that's a personal preference. Some people do, some people don't. So that's how I wash chicken. So for our sauce, we are going to put, so I'm telling you guys, this is the most important part of this demo today. Okay, so I'm going to put my stove on about a medium heat. And this is the one time you need to have all of your ingredients ready to go, because when you're doing a cream sauce, you want to almost have two hands going, one putting ingredients in and one constantly mixing. Sometimes it's that 2 seconds that you turn your back is when your sauce gets burnt, scorched, or curdles. All right, so once we start doing the sauce, we shouldn't be doing anything else because we really want to pay attention to that. So my pasta is actually looking pretty good right now. So I am going to take that off. All right, so give me 1 second. So I just drained my pasta off. I didn't put anything on it. I didn't put any oil on it because, like I said, we're going to add it, add the cream sauce to it, so I really don't need to add anything else to it, okay? So can everyone see the pot? All right. So I have my pot on a medium, and the first thing that's going to go in there is my butter. So this is not the time to skimp, okay, on the butter, because that's what really creates that decadence of the sauce and the creaminess, okay, along with the heavy cream. Okay, so we really want to make sure we are using enough butter for this one. So here I have my butter melting, and we don't want to scorch the butter or burn it because then it'll change the flavor, but it'll also change the color of our sauce, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm just, while my butter is melting, I'm also going to add my garlic into this. Why am I adding my garlic now? Because I want to take out the harshness of the garlic. So as you know, garlic has that very strong flavor, but when you saute it with the butter, it really just kind of lightens the garlic flavor, but enhances it as well, okay? So.
Is it salted butter?
Yes, ma'am. We're going all in. So salted butter and fresh garlic.
And how did you prep the garlic?
So I crushed it. So I have a few different ways. Most of the time I use a mandolin and just grate it, or I can put it in my food processor. I have a little hand chopper and puree it with a little bit of olive oil. But this one I just grated it really small. All right. So as you can see, my butter is still nice in color. And it's not burning, nor is my garlic. So now we're gonna really start with our sauce. So the next thing we're gonna add is our flour, plain regular flour. And this is gonna go in. And this is what's gonna create the thickness for our sauce. And it's what's gonna hold our sauce together, right? So we're basically making a bechamel or a white cream sauce here. So hopefully you can see in my pan. Now the next thing, well, I'm gonna really try and multitask here. So I'm a righty, but I'm gonna use my left hand to do this. So when you put the flour in the pan, I'm gonna turn this down because I do not want my flour to turn brown or change color. So I turn my heat down to a low and I'm gonna stir. There's three things that we're gonna be adding: chicken stock, heavy cream, and milk. We're also gonna add it in a very specific order. Chicken stock, because it can take the heat as much as it can and nothing would happen. And it'll ensure that we get everything off the bottom of the pan and the sauce starts going. Then we're gonna add the heavy cream next because of the fat content. It's gonna hold up. And the last one we're gonna add is the milk, which is really to thin out the sauce to the consistency that we want. But by the time we add the milk, our sauce will already be established, so that's perfectly fine. All right, so I'm gonna add my stock. And once I add my stock, it's gonna look a little interesting. It's gonna look like, I call it dirty water. And then it's gonna start thickening up as we keep going. So now I'm gonna turn my heat back up to a medium. And only when I start seeing this thicken am I gonna add my heavy cream, all right?
And are any of your stock or milk or cream heated, or are they cold?
Nope. Everything came out of the refrigerator and has been sitting on the counter for about 20 minutes. So you can use it straight from refrigeration, or you can keep it out and get it to room temperature. But the method that we're using also helps that, to make sure that we're just dropping heavy cream right into the pot, because you have the chicken stock in there. So if everybody can see the consistency of that, all right? So it's thickening up nicely. And it's gonna continue to thicken up, and then I'm gonna start adding the heavy cream. I'm gonna show you the consistency. There we go. So hopefully you can see that. So it coats the bottom of the pan. Now I'm gonna go with my heavy cream. And if you notice, I'm keep stirring, all right? My biggest fear is once I turn my eyes on this, it goes downhill real fast. So I'm just gonna keep stirring. So my heavy cream is incorporated, and I'm gonna give that about 30 seconds before I add our milk. All right. So as you can see the consistency once again, it doesn't look like much, but keep in mind we're gonna add milk and cheese to this. So the cheese is also gonna be the other thickener. So we don't want this part to be too thick that when we add the cheese, we end up with a block of cheese versus a cheese sauce, all right? So now I'm gonna add my whole milk. And this is where I just need to make sure my sauce is at nice and warm, not boiling, but really warm, so that when I start adding the cheese, it will melt, okay? So we're gonna give that about a minute or so to come up to temp. And at this point, you might be able to walk away from it for about 10, 15 seconds at a time, but not much longer, all right?
What would happen if you didn't keep stirring, or if you walked away? What's gonna happen to the sauce?
Well, there's a few things. It all depends on your pot, okay? So if your temperature of your pan is too high and you walk away, you can scorch the bottom or burn the bottom of your sauce, and then that messes up all of your flavor. The other thing is, if you walk away, it might bubble over because it gets too hot, and then it starts bubbling everywhere, and then that's not a fun cleanup, right? And then the other thing you don't want to happen is just that the starts clumping together, because you do have a flour or a roux in this, so you just want to be mindful of that. You don't want the flour to start settling and burning on the bottom of the pan. So make sure you know it's arm day once you're doing this, right? So make sure you're strong. It's a lot of whisking. The other way you can actually do this, believe it or not, I call it, it's the one pot way, is you can heat everything just the way I'm doing on the stove, and then be very careful about it, but you can pour this into your blender with the top a little bit off, and then you add your cheese, and it guarantees you to have a velvety, smooth texture without having to babysit it on the stove. So that's also another good shortcut if you're just not in the mood to be stirring this all day long. You can definitely heat this up, add your cheese, put it in the blender, and it comes out perfect. Just be mindful if you're putting hot stuff in a blender, you don't cover it all the way. You need to leave it a little bit uncovered, and you put a rag over it so that it doesn't explode on you. All right.
Two questions. You have not added the cheese to the sauce yet, right?
Nope.
Okay.
Cheese is going in next.
Ahmad is keeping up with you.
Okay.
And then what's your method for keeping pasta from sticking between being done cooking and the next step?
You can either add oil or you just rinse it with some cold water again. All right, so now I'm going to start adding my cheese. And I always say the amount of cheese you add really is about what your flavor profiles, what you want. So I like the flavor of strong cheese. So I feel I tend to add more cheese than the average person. All right, but one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my cheese gradually. So I'm not just going to dump the container in there. And you can see my sauce looks like a little thicker than heavy cream is the consistency it is right now. Now I'm going to start adding my cheese. And all I have here is some grated Parmesan. You can use grated, you can use shaved, you can use ground. Doesn't really matter, it's your preference. All right, see how nice that's coming in there? See how velvety and smooth that is? Nice, and my cheese is melting. So I'm gonna add some more. And once we add the cheese, then the fun begins, because that's when we can flavor our sauce kind of what I call our taste. All right. And I think I'm gonna go about that much. So my consistency is looking pretty beautiful right now. Can you guys see this? See the strands of cheese? So I'm gonna keep stirring until all of that disappears. Okay.
So roughly how much cheese do you feel like you added?
About 1.5 cups. Okay, so you see how cheese strands are getting less? And the consistency of that is perfect. So from this point on is where I say this is where we really need to use our taste buds, right? So I am going to add a little bit of salt, and be very careful with the salt because keep in mind Parmesan cheese has a lot of salt. So I'm adding a little bit of salt, a little bit of black pepper, and then red pepper flakes. I personally like a little bit of a kick. It's not to add necessarily for it to be spicy, but it gives a nice kick to it, okay? So I'm just adding a little bit of red pepper flakes to that. And then I also have some fresh herbs that I'm going to add to my sauce as well.
Which ones?
I have some parsley, a little bit of oregano, and some basil. All right, and that goes right in. And now the fun part. I'm actually going to taste it and make sure that it is good. Perfect. Not because I made it, but it is. All right, so I'm going to turn my heat off at this point because I do not want to mess up that beauty. And as you guys can see, this may not look thick to you, but keep in mind, we have pasta. Pasta absorbs the sauce. If we were to make the sauce too thick, by the time we add the pasta, it would be very gluey and goopy, and we don't want that. We want a nice creamy consistency, but at the same time, we want our pasta to be able to move around in the sauce. All right, so my sauce is done. I'm gonna take that off the heat because I don't want that to continue cooking. All right. And then the next step here, I have just a stainless steel bowl that I'm gonna add my pasta to, the pasta that's been sitting. And it is gonna look like, oh my gosh, it's all sticking together. Once we add the sauce, it's gonna be perfectly fine, okay? The next thing I'm gonna do is switch to a spatula because what I don't wanna do is break up my pasta, all right? So here I have my pasta in the bowl. Then I'm gonna add my broccoli that's been blanched, okay? You can see that right here. Then goes the chicken. Can't tell me that doesn't look beautiful and it isn't even done yet. You guys see that? Look at that. Oh. So I'm gonna give this a quick toss before I add my sauce. And as you can see, my pasta is not stuck together. Nothing is stuck together. All right. Now we're gonna add our sauce. And the amount of sauce you're gonna add really depends on what you like, but keep in mind if this is not being served right away, it will thicken up as it sits. So always add a little bit more sauce to be prepared for that to happen. All right, hopefully you can see that. So while I'm mixing this up, I'm just gonna make a simple garnish. And the same pan, you can use a separate pan, but I'm gonna use the same pan because it's just a garnish that I'm doing. So I have my pan that I had my chicken in, I'm heating that up. And I'm actually just gonna bruise a lemon on there for one of our garnishes, all right? So I'm gonna add a little bit more sauce just because I don't want that to thicken up too much.
Did you say you're going to bruise a lemon?
I should say sear a lemon. That's what I should say.
Sear?
Yes. All right. So sauce is good. Let me just let you guys see the consistency of this. My pasta. There is some sauce on the bottom. Okay. Put that to the side. My pan is hot, and all I'm doing is taking a lemon. I've done nothing to it more than cut it in half, and the flesh side, and just put it in the pan. You don't need anything in the pan. Don't touch it. This is another thing, do not touch it, because we want it to get some nice color, all right? And then, for the end part, we're gonna plate this up and I'll show you what it's supposed to look like.
Quick question.
Yes.
So if I am not a meat eater, if I'm a vegetarian,
Yep.
what are some things that you could suggest I substitute instead of chicken? Or if I'm a pescatarian, could I do it with fish?
I personally like salmon Alfredo. And I find salmon lends well because it has a little bit more texture to it than a whitefish. So I would definitely grill a piece of salmon and then flake it and add it in the same way we would add the chicken. You can use tofu. If you're using tofu, I would suggest a little olive oil, salt, pepper, some Italian herbs, and lemon zest. Season it and then sear it the same way we did the chicken and then add it to it. Or you can just do broccoli and other vegetables as well. So I'm gonna check my lemon. Okay, not quite ready, so I'm gonna give it a little more time. All right. And like I said, I love serving Alfredo in a bowl because it just feels more comforting to me. All right. So we have our pasta, ooh, broccoli, some chicken. I'm gonna get a little bit of everything in there. As you can see the consistency of that, right? It's nice and creamy. And then to finish it off, I'm just gonna add some more Parmesan cheese. A little bit of parsley. And because this is a small bowl, I am going to cut my lemon versus leaving it whole. All right, turn my heat off. Lemon is perfect. There we go. Hopefully everybody can see. Can you see my lemon?
We can. It's beautiful.
And essentially, this would be my finished plate.
How do you store it? Can you keep it all combined and just put it in the fridge, or do you need to keep your components separated? And
As in, are you keeping it separate for cooking it later or just for eating it later?
so for example, if you cooked, so you have some leftovers for eating later.
Yep. Honestly, you put it in a Tupperware container just like you would anything else. And then once you're ready for it, put it in the microwave, it'll loosen back up. I'll tell you, once you put it in a bowl, it's gonna look like a big glob once it gets cold. If you wanna heat it up, you just take a little portion up, heat it up in the microwave, it'll come right back to life once you have enough sauce in there. So,
Any worries about that, a cream sauce, reheating a cream sauce?
not necessarily if you've done the first steps properly.
All right. Any other questions for Chef Akeisha? Oh, Ahmad, we want to see your results.
Yes.
Can you share your video? Let's see.
Oh, I think we did pretty good.
I'm trying to find Ahmad so I can spotlight his. Oh, there he is. All right, hang on, everybody.
How does it, ooh, nice. How does it taste? Is that cilantro?
That is cilantro. I haven't had. I don't have parsley, so I have to improvise.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So I guess the ultimate test is the taste test, right?
Any other questions for Chef Akeisha? Oh, Ahmad says it's a thumbs up.
Thank you.
Okay. Beautiful. Any other questions for Chef Akeisha? We will post this video in a day or two. The recipe is online. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Chef Akeisha.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And thanks for letting me see your smiling faces. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Krista, should